Hi everyone, we are excited to have you here in today's fun-filled learning session at Uolo. Here is a quick look at how you can submit your work after the class. As a first step, go to live.uolo.com. You can use any browser to access this site. On this page, you will see a list of all our classes. Scroll down and you can see the Submit Your Work button. And then you will see a list of the classes that you've last attended, which could, for example, show the dance or craft or science experiment classes you've attended recently. Next, it will show you the list of children whose names are registered in this mobile number. Choose your name from this list to submit your work. For instance, if you are Satvik Kumar, choose that name. And then choose the class for which you would like to make your submission. For example, if you've attended the New Year's Masquerade Party session and you'd like to make the submission for this class, click on the Submit Your Work button below that. And then upload the photo you've taken. Choose the image from your phone and click Submit. You can scroll down and view all your past submissions and see how many of your friends or peers have liked your work. You can also see others' work and like their work to inspire your friends. If you want to showcase your work on social media, that too is very simple. Click on Share, copy the link and post it on Instagram or Facebook or any other platform of your choice. Just a tiny reminder, your submission looks a lot better if you could click a photo in the landscape mode rather than the portrait mode. Do not forget to tag us at YOLO_app. I'm eagerly looking forward to all your submissions right after this class.
Hey there kids, how are you doing? Welcome to today's class. Today's class is going to be another fun-filled class. Now in the previous class we went ahead and spoke all about animation, and today's class is going to be all about news. Now before we get started with today's activity as well as what we're going to go ahead and talk about in the list of materials and everything on those lines, let's talk a little bit about the certificate program as well as your submissions. Now coming to your certificate program, like you all know, you're getting certificates for the work that you're going ahead and doing. What you have to just keep in mind is go ahead and attend all of your classes. If you don't attend all of your classes of any particular course, then what will happen is you're not learning the way we want you to go ahead and learn. So make sure you're attending all of the classes of a particular course. The second thing to go ahead and keep in mind is to go ahead and do all of your submissions. So for example, this is a 4-part course. Go ahead and attend all of the 4 classes as well as go ahead and do all of your submissions, and automatically you will get a certificate. Now apart from that, let's talk about your submissions in general. Now I've been going ahead and telling you over quite a bit of time now about how you need to go ahead and focus on your submissions irrespective of how you've done on that day. So some days you've done good, some days you've done bad, some days you've done average, some days you've done amazingly well. But irrespective of how you've gone ahead and done, I as a teacher urge you to go ahead and do your submissions. I want to see your work after every single class because I want to see how well you are improving. Now there might be very, very small improvements, there might be very, very slight improvements that basically go ahead and take place, but as a teacher I can identify those small bits and I want to see those small bits. So make sure you're going ahead and doing all of your submissions so that I as a teacher can go ahead and check that out. Now, today's class, like I mentioned, is going to be all about news. So we're going to be going ahead and talking about a lot, of aspects of news. For example, what news is, the types of news, how it sort of evolved over time, and what it is in today's day and age, what it could mean in today's day and age, and what it could mean in the past. But before we get started with that, let me tell you a little bit about the activity that we'll do today. Now, in the last class, I sort of showed you pictures and I gave you sort of like a creative format of doing your submission. And today as well, I wanted it to be creative, but a little different. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and create sort of like a sample or mock-up newspaper. So now this, when we go ahead and do, I wanted it to be both art and craft related, but I also wanted it to be sort of creative. So what I'm going to be going ahead and doing is I'm going to be showing you how to create like a basic format of a newspaper, but I'm not going to be going ahead and filling up the newspaper with any form of information. So for example, the photograph part of it, the headings, as well as the information in the newspaper, I'm not going to be going ahead and writing. I'm just going to be showing you how you can write it. And what I want you to do is to come up with some form of news that you want to go ahead and showcase. It could be something that is personal, it could be something that is related to your family, it could be something that's related to India, it could be something related to your school, it could be related to anything, your friends, family, whatever you like. So create sort of like a news article in your head and write it down. So let's get started firstly with the list of materials that we need for today's class, and then we can start our conversation, as well as we can start with a little bit of creation. So the first thing that you need for today's class is going to be a sheet of a paper. Now you can go ahead and take any sheet of paper you have with you. I've gone ahead and just thrown out a sheet of paper from my, sort of booklet. So I have one sheet of paper right there. The next thing that you'll need for today's class is going to be a pencil. Now the pencil basically is for you to go ahead and, sketch out sort of like the margins, sketch out the way you're going to go ahead and do everything. So have a pencil with you. The next thing that you'll need for today's class is going to be a ruler. Now, the ruler basically is for drawing all of your lines and margins for you to go ahead again and create the format of a newspaper. And the last thing that you'll need for today's class is going to be a bunch of sketch pens. Now, the sketch pens are optional. For my piece that I created today, I just went ahead and did sort of like a black and white piece. I didn't really go ahead and use any form of color. So you can go ahead and do a black and white piece. You want to go ahead and color it, you can go ahead and color it, do whatever you like. Now, let's start off with the first step of doing our format of the thing. And while you're going ahead and doing it, I can go ahead and start giving you the information. So let's start with the first format. What I want you to do is I want you to take the sheet of paper and sort of tear out the edge. So here you can see I'm sort of pointing out the edge, and I want you to go ahead and start tearing it out the way I am going ahead and tearing it out. Now this part is optional. I want it to look like sort of like an old newspaper which had some old news in it. So hence I want you to go ahead and start tearing the edges out. If you feel you don't want to tear the edges out and you want sort of like a new crisp sheet of newspaper, then you can go ahead and completely leave this part out. But this is something that will give sort of like an added effect or sort of like an added look to your newspaper. So that's what I'm doing right now. So if you feel like it's a little hard to do, you can use sort of like a ruler to tear it out, or you can go ahead and use a pair of scissors as well, whatever works for you. But make sure you're going ahead and sort of tearing it out nicely. Good job, everybody. Really, really, really well done. Amazing work. Perfect. Perfect. So now you can see I have my sheet of paper ready right there. All right, now let's go ahead and get started about our concept while you go ahead and continue doing so. So today's topic, like I mentioned, is going to be news. And now what is news? Let's start from there. Now, news is basically any information about the current events that are happening around you. Now, current events could be related to anything. It could be something that's related to the government. It could be something related to your friends and family. It could be something related to sports. It could be something related to schools. It could be something related to medicine. It could be anything for that matter of fact. We have even news on celebrities. We have news on politicians. We have news on famous people around the world. You have news that circulates around about anything that is currently happening around us. Now, obviously, news in a way becomes very, very important because it gets us very, very informed of what is happening around us. So, for example, let's say that right now the Olympics is basically going on, and wherein people are going ahead and representing India and playing. Now, everything that is happening over there is sort of like broadcasted or sort of, informed to us Indians. Now, why is it that something like this is important? Because as a bunch of people living in a particular country, what happens is we want to go ahead and see what sort of progress us as Indians are going ahead and making. Now, whether we are winning, certain medals in the Olympic, or whether we are not winning certain medals in the Olympic is something that obviously we want to know. But irrespective of that, this form of representation that we have as a country somewhere outside in some sort of sport, in some sort of thing, gives us sort of like an encouragement, gives us sort of like an idea that yes, someone else out there is doing it, so probably I can also go ahead and do it. And it gives us sort of like a current situation and scenario of things. Another very big example of how news is really, really important and how it is part part of our day-to-day life is, for example, COVID-19. Now, COVID-19, like I have discussed in my previous COVID-19 course as well as COVID-19 workshop, was all about how COVID-19 started in China. Now let's say there was no concept of news, then what would have happened? The COVID-19 would have been sort of like identified in China, but as it went around the world, it wouldn't be identified by people would have to again try figuring out what is happening, why are people falling sick, why are these symptoms existing. But what happened when it came to COVID-19 was China detected it first. They gave the information to the government body that was involved in pandemics and medicine, and then they went ahead, found out all the information, and started spreading that through news all around the world. So automatically what happened was people started getting an idea that yes, this is happening, that is happening, everything that is happening around the world, people are facing some kind of symptoms, people are getting hospitalized, people are unfortunately passing away. So things like that are basically going ahead and taking place are well informed to everybody. So automatically you can see how prevalent and how important news is. It comes into such a big factor. It is something that that really is a binding force when it comes to bringing all of the countries together. Now, since I've given you the concept of what news is and basic information and importance of news, let's move on to the next step of our newspaper creation. So, for the next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going ahead and drawing sort of like a box for my heading. Now, this is basically the name of the newspaper. So, if you've ever seen any newspaper, you have Bangalore Times, you have Times of India, you have different things. So, this is that box where you'll go ahead and write the heading of the newspaper. So, for this newspaper, I'm going to go ahead and name it definitely. If you don't want to go ahead and name it the same thing that I'm naming it, completely all right, go ahead and name it whatever you like. So once I'm finished up with that, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the body of my newspaper, and I want to go ahead and sort of add in two spots where I want to go ahead and it to be sort of pictorial. So I'm drawing two boxes which sort of identify as the places where images will be put up. So here you can see I'm doing one large box right on top, and then right at the bottom I'm going to go ahead and do another box. Now here, depending on what kind of information you want to go ahead and put in, and what kind of information will be there, you can or cannot add two boxes of pictures. I wanted to go ahead and add in two boxes, so I'm adding in two boxes. Let's say you have only one picture to add in, then you can add in just one picture. Let's say you don't have any pictures, then you don't have to go ahead and do this step at all. You can completely skip out doing the picture boxes as well. Perfect. So as you can see, I've gone ahead and finished up till this point of time. You can go ahead and do so, decide on how many boxes you want in terms of pictures, and go ahead and draw that out, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so while you're doing this, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about where the concept of news came from. So like you all know, news, if you break it up, the concept, if you break it up, you have the ending part of it, but the first part of it is basically called new. So new is something that I want to talk about. Is basically news is something that, like I mentioned, is all related to the current day and age. So the concept of newness is always going to be there when it comes to news. Let's say something happened 10 years back, then that concept becomes history. It isn't something that's going ahead and existing in today's day and age. So when we say news, it is something that is always going to be a new factor, something that is really unheard of, something that nobody knows about. Yes, you might have different people going ahead and reporting the same news over a period of time, but it is something that is to inform several sets of people. So news is going to be something that is always new. Now let's go ahead and talk about where the concept of news came from. Now the evolution of news basically started from, again, very olden days. The concept basically started from folk news existing. So let's say there was a tribal set, or let's say there were a bunch of people living in a particular town or a village at certain points of time. What started happening was they had certain forms of information that existed in and around them. So let's say that they have a new priest coming into town, and that priest is going to go ahead and probably have a procession and is going to go ahead and provide food for the day to a bunch of people. Now, how would this priest sort of communicate this information? Now, obviously he could go ahead and tell word of mouth, or he could go ahead and put up sort of flyer, or he could go ahead and tell one person and there could be announcement made. Now, in whatever manner he basically went ahead and informed people, it was a form of news, because basically it was what was happening at a certain point of time was basically spread across. Now, in olden times, the news was always done through word of mouth, because the concept of paper and the concept of pictures, the concept of announcements weren't really, well known at that point of time. So everything was word of mouth. So let's say a relative at some, a far off location is basically sick. Now, how does this news pass from one space to another? It would basically happen through word of mouth. They would probably have a messenger who would go ahead, take all of this information, remember it, then walk to another person, tell them, then the other person will tell another person. So as people started communicating, it was basically a form of word of mouth concept that basically started happening. Now, like I said, at that point of time, it was just basic day-to-day activities, or probably, some few major events here and there, probably festivities and things like that were spoken about on a day-to-day basis. But what has started happening over time was we started having a form of kingdomship or government systems that basically came into play. So when you have sort of like a kingdom, or when you have sort of like an area that is ruled by someone, the government or the king at that point of time, or the queen at that point of time, or whoever is basically in charge, the minister or the prime minister or the president, whoever that set of people is basically electing, whatever it was called in their space and in their time, was someone who was giving out the rules, was giving out regulations, was making out announcements. So this was another format of news, over time going ahead and spreading. So what used to happen was, let's say we have a Rani, living in, let's say, Tamil Nadu. So she basically has some form of news to give out, for example, that she's expecting a child, and that we're going to have a prince who's going to be born into society, or we're going to have a new prince who's going to come ahead, and he's going to be part of our kingdom. So how do you go ahead and sort of announce this news? The way you announce this news is again through word of mouth. They will go ahead and have a bunch of people to go ahead and talk to, and automatically it goes ahead and spreads around. Now, early news formats, like I mentioned, was all related to daily activities, and as kings and kingdoms started existing, then it was related to government announcement. But what happened when there were wars and all of that came over? So when wars, or when people started fighting over geographic, pieces of land, what started happening was there were different news formats that came about, which were talking about politics, which were talking about news in terms of war, what kingdom is owned by which kingdom now, which king is owning which kingdom, which ruler is going ahead and taking care of another space. So things like that and information like that was also going ahead and starting to spread out. So the basic evolution was basically that it was the need for information that needed to be spread over time was the concept of where basic news started from. So now I can see all of you have gone ahead and finished your picture boxes, so we can go ahead and start drawing the heading part of it. So what I'm doing is I wanted this to be two news articles. The two pictures are two separate news articles in my sheet of paper. So I'm going ahead and drawing two fat lines as the lines sort of like where my news articles will go ahead and sit. So the headings of my news articles will sit. So here I'm going ahead and drawing two lines like so to create my news articles. Now, in order to create sort of like a mock-up, I'm going ahead and starting to write a heading. So I'm writing Uolo News right here, because that's going to be the name of my newspaper. What I would like for you to do is come ahead and write a heading for your newspaper as well while I continue talking. And you can go ahead and sort of draw those two lines, or the two headings, or the one heading, whatever, how much ever headings you're going to go ahead and have, as in terms of the process as well. Go ahead and have that. Now, instead of going ahead and continuing with the process of all the information I want to continue to give, let's finish up, the mock format that you can see, and you can go ahead and continue working on it while I go ahead and give you news. So here I'm showing you how you can go ahead and take any marker and do sort of like the heading. I'm going ahead and taking a black marker and writing Uolo news over there. If you want to use colored markers, then you can definitely go ahead and use colored markers. It's completely up to you on how you want to go ahead and do it. So once you've gone ahead and done that, you can go ahead and add in any designs of your choice. I'm just adding two dots, as simple as that. Now here, like I mentioned, will be the spot where you go ahead and add in the heading. So I'm going ahead and just adding really bold, scribbles. This will be a format how you can add in your headings, but here, instead of having scribbles, actually write down what heading you wanted it to be. So this is a format how we will have the headings. And here, in really small scribbles, I'm going ahead and drawing down the content part of it. Now here, like I said, I'm doing a sample or a mock-up, but this is an example to give you as to where you will go ahead and write all of your information. So whatever story, whatever news you want to write, this will be the heading on top, and in the bottom you'll go ahead and in this format sort of write your news article. So here you can see how amazing that is looking. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw sort of like a boundary for my pictures as well. Now this is again for my picture to be like stuck, or you can go ahead and draw something. You can do sort of like an illustration, whatever you like. So here you can see I'm going ahead and outlining both of those pictures. If you have one picture, then great. If you don't have any picture, that also completely works. And then what I did is I went ahead and just did a scribble like in a form that you can go ahead and stick something, or you can go ahead and draw something right there. Then what I did was, right at the end, you can go ahead and take an eraser and erase out all of the extra lines everywhere, and have sort of this format and a look that's going to come up. Now here I'm going to go ahead and continue talking about all of the information I want to talk about, and you can now use this sort of like a reference to go ahead and start writing down your news. Make sure to have a good heading on top of what the name of your newspaper is going to be. Make sure for your article, if you're writing one article, then one heading. If you're writing two articles, three articles, how many ever articles, accordingly those many headings, and have a good body in terms of what information you're going to go ahead and write inside the article. I'm going to leave this mock-up right here for you to keep looking at and keep referring to while I go ahead and move on to the next part of my conversation. Now the next part of my conversation in terms of news is going to be the modes of news, or how we go ahead and spread information from one place to another. Now, like I mentioned, news is something that happens in terms of current events. So earlier on, it was obviously word of mouth that was a form that was used in terms of spreading news. But would word of mouth be the fastest form of news information, or the fastest form of spreading news over time? I don't really think so, because the thing what would happen is, let's say one person gets the news first, but over time, slowly, difference and hundreds and thousands of people would get the news. Wouldn't be that sort of conversation that would happen in a jiff, or it wouldn't be something that would happen really quick. So automatically people were looking at figuring out different modes and ways of going ahead and spreading news. So earlier, the word of mouth concept turned into announcements. So what used to happen basically was, there used to be sort of like a messenger, or someone who used to go ahead and make announcements. So for example, in the government era or in the war era, there would be an in charge who would have that piece of information, gather up everybody at a certain point of time, probably in the mornings or in the evenings, announce whatever news that needed to be informed to people, and then people would disperse. Obviously, instead of talking to one person, if I'm talking to 50 people at one go, it is more a spread of news rather than like slowly spread of news. So that was the second format of how news was spread. The third format of how news basically went ahead and spread across was related to newspapers. Now, newspapers were basically invented only after the printing press was invented. So, the concept of print and the concept of type was invented in China. And when it was invented in China, what happened was they went ahead and started, mass printing newspapers. So, what they did was they started taking information and they started going ahead and, putting it into articles like the format that we have gone ahead and drawn right now, and they started taking that and creating newspapers like this and distributing it. And as people started distributing the newspapers, automatically people started reading and getting to know information in a jiffy. Now, technically, a jiffy in the sense, what used to happen was it was a day-to-day news format. Earlier, probably it would be weekly or bi-weekly where information was being spread, but it was a huge improvement from the past. And newspaper obviously was form of a revelation that basically happened. So what started happening was people used to get the news articles every day. They would be informed about what happened yesterday, what happened day before. Then again tomorrow there would be a newspaper that was sent to their home. So again you go ahead and get newspaper. So day to day news was being updated with individuals and people. Now after the concept of the newspaper was founded, we had all forms of electronic information that came into play. The first electronic information that came into play was basically that of the radio. So people were connected via the radio and news was spread via the radio. So news anchors, via the radio used to sit to talk about daily, things that were basically going ahead and happening. And it was obviously much more different and advanced when it came to the newspaper, because newspapers were sent daily, probably in the morning or evening was when a newspaper was sent to individuals. But when it came to the radio, it could be accessed at any points of times. So let's say at 4 o'clock in the evening, there's some sudden news that basically comes up. People could tune into the radio, and the radio could go ahead, like people off the radio could go ahead and start telling you the information that needed to be informed. And you didn't have to wait till the next day morning to get a newspaper, read it, and then get informed that, oh, this has happened. So automatically you can see how it was evolving over time. Information was spreading quicker and quicker and quicker. And after the concept of a radio came in, we have the concept of television. We had, news anchors used to have morning shows, evening shows, afternoon shows. All of those. We had weather reports and things like that that basically started coming in. So news channels started coming in and giving out information. Now, obviously, after the whole concept of the television era came, we had the internet that came in, and internet obviously is the fastest form of news. You can go ahead and get any form of news in a instant. Something happens somewhere in the world, immediately in seconds you have all the news companies, and you have Instagram, you have Facebook, you have social media, you have everything around you going ahead and giving you all of the information about anything and everything that you need at any point of time, whether it is fresh news, whether it's history, whatever sort of information you need at any point of time will be available to you within seconds. Now, that is the form that we live in today. And yes, though we still have the concept of newspaper, we still have radio, we still have TV news, but internet is the fastest form of news that we have today. Everything is understood and witnessed at a jiffy. Now, since we have gone ahead and spoken so much about the modes and the concepts of how news spreads, I want to go ahead and talk about one last thing when it comes to news, and then we can wind up with today's class. The last thing that I want to talk about is the concept of news companies. Now, obviously, like I mentioned earlier on, probably there was a messenger who used to gather sort of the information and spread it out. That slowly evolved into news channels or news companies. So if you know, there are a lot of companies around us in today's day and age who basically own the rights to go ahead and share news. They are basically media companies that exist. So let's say Times of India, for example. So Times of India is basically a news company that goes ahead and creates information. So they don't create information, sorry. What I mean is they go ahead and gather information and inform people. That is a better way of putting it. So what they basically do is, something happens at some place in the world, they go ahead and they have reporters who go ahead and get information that, okay, this is happening in this spot, and then they go ahead and start spreading it in different mediums. So for example, they have sort of like a TV channel where they'll be going ahead and telecasting the information there. They have probably many social media platforms, so they go ahead and start sending their information there. They have a website, they go ahead and start putting the information there. They have newspapers, they go ahead and start putting the information there. They have apps, so you can go ahead and check out whatever is happening over there as well. So they have different formats of going ahead and spreading news, and they go ahead and spread news in that manner. Now, obviously, it's become an industry today. You have a bunch of reporters and you have a bunch of journalists and you have photographers and you have everything. So, earlier, probably it was a one man army who was doing sort of like the news passing on part of the whole play. But today, we have major companies with major teams in different scopes going ahead and working behind just one single newspaper or one single magazine or one single radio or one single TV show or one single internet article that you go ahead and see. Now, since we've gone ahead and discussed so much about news, I can see all of you have gathered so much information today. Now, I can see most of you have gone ahead and finished up with your pieces, and it's looking so beautiful. I can see how your newspapers are looking, and it's amazing. Now, if you're still going ahead and drawing your news articles, go ahead and do so. Take your time, get creative of how you want to go ahead and do it. There's no hard and fast rule that you have to finish in class only. So go ahead and take your time. So excellent job, everybody. You have done a really well done with your work today. Today was a super creative class in a couple of manners. One is you learned so much information about news with me talking. Second is you learned how to create a beautiful crafty newspaper. And third creative aspect is for you to come up with an article that you want to go ahead and write it down. Now, I hope you had a fun time with this class because I had a lot of fun and I can't wait to see your submissions and read the news articles that you're going to go ahead and write. Now, this could be something, like I said, personal. It could be something related to school, friends, what is happening in India, anything, whatever you want to go ahead and write. So write something fun, write something, amazing, write something really creative. If you probably know how to like write a song or you want to write a poem, even all of that, maybe create a beautiful illustration, go ahead and create that because I would love to go ahead and see it. I hope you had fun in today's class because I had a lot of fun, and I'll see you guys in the next class. Till then, remember two things. Firstly, certificate program, make sure to go ahead and grab your certificates. Second thing, make sure to go ahead and do all of your submissions on time. Have a look at the submission video right now. Bye.
Hi everyone, we are excited to have you here in today's fun-filled learning session at Uolo. Here is a quick look at how you can submit your work after the class. As a first step, go to live.uolo.com. You can use any browser to access this site. On this page, you will see a list of all our classes. Scroll down and you can see the Submit Your Work button. And then you will see a list of the classes that you've last attended, which could, for example, show the dance or craft or science experiment classes you've attended recently. Next, it will show you the list of children whose names are registered in this mobile number. Choose your name from this list to submit your work. For instance, if you are Satvik Kumar, choose that name. And then choose the class for which you would like to make your submission. For example, if you've attended the New Year's Masquerade Party session and you'd like to make the submission for this class, click on the Submit Your Work button below that. And then upload the photo you've taken. Choose the image from your phone and click Submit. You can scroll down and view all your past submissions and see how many of your friends or peers have liked your work. You can also see others' work and like their work to inspire your friends. If you want to showcase your work on social media, that too is very simple. Click on Share, copy the link and post it on Instagram or Facebook or any other platform of your choice. Just a tiny reminder, your submission looks a lot better if you could click a photo in the landscape mode rather than the portrait mode. Do not forget to tag us at YOLO_app. I'm eagerly looking forward to all your submissions right after